Is it enough to do exegesis if you're a pastor? Is there any need to go beyond that? And if so, what does it take? Well, in this video, I am going to interview Noah, who is a pastor who went to seminary, learned Greek, but then found he needed to keep going and learn a lot more. In fact, the way he puts it is that it was the difference for him between a 250 hitter, this is a baseball analogy, a 250 hitter and a 300 hitter. This makes all the difference in pastoral ministry. So, let's get into it. Pastors are very busy people. They have a lot of responsibilities. They also have the burden of prepping sermons every week, as well as, leadership generally speaking. It's a lot of work, and it's quite a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of stress. And honestly, a lot of pastors just really don't drive their ministry much beyond just what they do on a day-by-day basis. And that was the case a little bit with Noah. So he went to seminary years ago, really, not that many years ago, maybe 10-ish years ago, I think somewhere around there. He's been a faithful pastor, serving his congregation for most of that time since. And he's been working with the Greek. He's been doing Greek exegesis on a week-by-week basis. He's been using the language in that kind of way. And he's really been faithful, but yet he's wanted to do a lot more. So I sat down with him a little while ago and we talked through him and his journey to go from where he was as a pastor who'd been through some training, and yet he still joined Master New Testament Greek and what he got out of that. So in this video, we're going to talk to him about what was missing in terms of his knowledge of the language. We're going to talk about what led him to join Master New Testament Greek and to take his Greek further than it already was. What was he missing is the key thing we're trying to look at there. What are the benefits really as a pastor of reading the New Testament rather than just doing exegesis? And then what was it that made the difference? Was there one thing that made all the difference for him to take his Greek forward? Now, there was a bunch of different answers to this, but nonetheless, there was one thing that I think he would say would be particularly helpful for him. So if you're a pastor or if you're involved in ministry, this video is really designed to encourage you to continue to invest in the language of the New Testament that it was originally written in. Before we get into this with Noah, let me just ask you to do one little thing. If you are in pastoral ministry, I would love for you to let me know in the comment section below just how you're using the language, right? How you're using the Greek text. Are you interacting with it directly? Are you reading it? Are you using exegetical tools? Are you working with it from Logos Bible Software or Accordance or BibleWorks or whatever? Just leave a comment in the comment section below. Let us know. I'd love to hear from you there. And one last thing before we get into it, and that is if you find this helpful, don't forget to hit that like button. And of course, if you want to get more like this, then hit the subscribe button and the notify bell as well. Let's get into it and talk to Noah about his experiences with learning Greek and developing his Greek beyond exegesis. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me, and I know others will be really interested as well. And your story is a little different. So why don't you talk to start with just about where you started from, and we'll go from there, I guess.
Yeah, where I started was in seminary about 8 years ago. First semester, baby Greek. That's where I wanted to be. I chose the seminary that I chose because of its emphasis on the original languages, and I wanted to be able to handle God's word as a pastor to the best of my ability with the most clarity that I could get. And so there's just nothing better than having a working knowledge of the languages.
Mm-hmm. So you started at seminary, you learned at seminary, you've been using biblical Greek as like for sermon prep and things like that. So you've been doing the exegetical process for years. What made you want to actually read the text in the first place?
Well, it goes back to the original desire to be able to teach God's word with that clarity and with that conviction. But what became clear in that process was that I need to start thinking in terms of how Greek is being used, not in how it's being translated into English or anything like that, but how Greek functions as a language. I remember reading, this would have been in, I think, third semester, my third semester in Greek, so second year Greek. We were as part of a reading Greek course, so reading First John and the early simple books. Part of that course was reading sections from Steve Runge's Discourse Grammar, and he had a couple places in there where just as a reminder, remember the goal is to understand Greek for Greek. And so that laid the foundation. And from there, I just wanted to grow in it. But I came to not necessarily a crisis point, but really a fork in the road. Am I going to stay with what I know, which was enough to get me by in sermon prep, or do I really want to do what I set out to do a while ago, which is to be able to pick it up and read it without helps, without tools, and that required a whole lot more of me than I was giving at the time.
Right. So you came in, I mean, I think you skipped beginning Greek with me. You had enough sort of knowledge of the language and you sort of just jumped straight into the Greek syntax course. What did you find going from as an exegete, going to reading? What did you find to be the most important stepping stone to be able to do, you know, to cross that chasm from where you were to reading Greek?
Really, the most important part was getting the detailed categories that you would get in Wallace, get those out of the picture as a kind of as a first step, but move that toward the back of the process, and leaving that really for exegesis and concentrated study. And so getting that out of my thinking process and replacing that with a minimalist approach to not try to figure out how this participle is being used in an English way, but why is this participle following the main verb, and what is its function? What is it adding to the main thought of that verse? And so when I got to that point, then the language really flowed. Reading the language really flowed a lot more, and I was able to take in a lot more and to spend more time and really at the end of it enjoy it. I mean, enjoy sitting down and reading, not feeling like I'm struggling through this, but to actually swim with the current instead of against it.
It was really the ability for the message to flow together. I mean, that's kind of what attracted you to it, right? The ability to sort of see the overall picture. Yeah. So tell me then, what was the most difficult aspect of going from exegesis to reading?
Not knowing the vocab.
Okay.
That was it. I remember when it was, I had set this goal to read. I wanted to read Paul's letters in Greek. And so I started in Romans and struggled through that. And really how it was working out was I had my Greek New Testament open, and then I had my English Bible open next to me, so that, okay, I have no idea what this word is. How's it translated over here? Got through Romans really slowly, got through 1 Corinthians really slowly. And it really was just getting through, not necessarily understanding what was going on and outside of translational framework. And then I got to 2 Corinthians, it just ground to a halt. I just couldn't get past it. It was getting frustrating and struggling. And so that was the time where I understood what I should have known all along is I need to know the vocab if this is going to be an enjoyable process, and if I'm going to grow in it, if I'm actually going to accomplish my goal to read it in the first place.
You know, as you sort of say that, I'm sort of thinking, you know, there's so many people out there who would do what you did and would just sort of tell themselves this is enough, right? What would you say to, I mean, yourself, if you go back in that time, now that you're where you are, what would you say to yourself back then if you were able to sort of say something like that, you know, tell yourself something?
Well, so I think in baseball terms a lot in this kind of scenario. So it's the different. Do you want to be a 250 hitter or a 300 hitter? And what that means is, in the context of a season, that basically means one more hit a week. Can you do one more hit, or can you get one more hit a week to be a 300 hitter rather than a 250 hitter? And that's simplifying it, but in order to get the one more hit a week, you got to spend hours more in the cages and the tunnels, hitting off a tee and you know, hitting off a machine or whatever. It's going to take just one more hit a week is going to take that much time. And so if I'm going to, if you're going to accomplish your goals, you've got to put in the work on the front end to actually know what the words themselves mean, without having to go to your tools and get on your phone and open up your app to look at what it is. You have to put in that work. and you have to embrace it.
Yeah. So that leads me to another question then. Isn't it enough to be a 250 hitter? I mean, isn't it enough just to struggle through your Greek, especially if you're a busy pastor and you can do the exegesis? Why would you do all that extra work just to get another 50, 50 points in a season?
Yeah, mixing metaphors, but for the baseball player, it's the difference between making league minimum and making millions more. For me, in the real world, it's the difference between clarity and murkiness, clarity and fog. Am I going to rely on commentaries and on tools that are very helpful, and I still look at those things, but I come at them now with a clarity, being able to come at them with a clarity that I can spar with them and I can argue with them and discuss points with them, and rather than rely on them to tell me what this means.
And behind that sits this bigger desire, right? To be, well, there's probably several things, but there's a desire to be faithful as a pastor, but there's also a desire to be efficient, right? With your time as well.
Yeah.
How does that flow into this?
So in Greek for Life, and I've seen this quote in some other places, but but the most recent place is Greek for Life, and it's a quote from Scott Haferman. I think he's still at Trinity. I'm not sure, but he said, and it always sticks out to me. He says, an hour in the original languages is worth 10 hours in the commentaries. And there's efficiency right there. And that's absolutely true. Just in sermon prep, I can spend a morning, 2 or 3 hours in a morning, just working through reading and then kind of breaking it down with diagramming and things like this, and even doing word studies with the lexicons and the dictionaries, and just spend 2 or 3 hours doing that and having a grasp on what this means, and then taking that and testing it against the men and women who have they published books on this and journal articles and all that. I'm not saying I'm this great exegete and I know a whole lot. It's just that there's not a whole lot of times where I'm surprised, like where I missed something or I didn't see that. Usually where that's going to come is the cross references and things like that. But as far as dealing with that passage, yeah, I know where they're coming from and where they're getting it from, and even where I would disagree because of this or that grammatical or syntactical point.
It almost sounds like what you're saying is that there's a difference in exegesis. If you start with the text and then go to the commentaries, if you start with the original, it's the same as like you start with the language, the text in the original language, and then go to the commentaries. You go to the commentaries kind of like with a loaded gun, so to speak, ready to what you're not going in empty chambers, so to speak. So if you don't have that though, you've got to do all of that work to find the bullets, find the gun, figure out exactly where it's supposed to be pointed. All that work has to be done prior, and then you get to the commentaries, and so you're really just saying all that work can be pre-done as a matter of habit, right? Just as a day-to-day part of what you do as a pastor and learning and mastering Greek, and that then saves you that time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, if you're getting value from this video, could I encourage you just hit the like button to let Noah know that you're finding what he's saying really helpful. Appreciate that. Let's get back to it. So, one of the things that is a challenge with pastors is finding the time, right? I don't have time to learn vocabulary. I don't have time to sort of dig into the languages. I'd love to, but I just don't have time. I've got people who want to do counseling. I've got elder meetings. I've got, a family to look after. What would you say to somebody who's in that situation?
I'd say it's not about the amount of time, the quantity of time that you can put to it on a regular basis. It's the quality of time that you put into it. So if you only have 5 or 10 minutes, then make the most of that 5 or 10 minutes and grow because of it. I mean, it's just the kind of the tagline that you have for Master of New Testament Greek is spot on, because it's taking small steps toward mastery. The goal is not going to be accomplished by taking a few big steps. It's going to be accomplished by taking small steps. So doing vocabulary every day, with an app, a phone app in these days where the system's set up that you can do vocab 5 or 6 times a day and you look at the end of the day, you've only spent 10 minutes, but you've done it in these increments of very little time. And it's just, you've hit the refresh button on so many of those vocab elements. As far as spending time in the text, as pastors, Martin Lloyd-Jones had the great line that you should never read your Bible to find text to preach on, but to read your Bible as the food that your soul is nourished by. And so why not spend the time doing that in the original language? And so if you're going to do devotions anyway, as a pastor, why not do it with with Greek and Hebrew, if that may be?
Yeah. Tell me about how do you feel that this extra step, that extra hours per week to get that extra 50 points in a season, how has that infected your ministry and the work you do with the people in your church?
Yeah, from my perspective, there's not really a week that goes by where I'm not talking to someone about something that I've been reading. So it compounds. There's not like, okay, I'm going to read this and it's only for this. It's not going to leak over into other areas. It's all interrelated and it compounds. And so I remember it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. I was talking to somebody about something from Philippians, which Philippians I read, I don't know, I think it was 8 or 9 months ago in the program. Might have been a year ago or something, but that one point about, that the lexeme or some grammatical point, I think it had something to do with Philippians 2. So the humility of Christ, and here's how Paul takes us through the humility of Christ. And it's beautiful and it's convicting, because we're to have this mindset too. And so it just compounds. It just builds, it enables the same kind of clarity and conviction that you get just in reading it. It leaks over into all other areas of the ministry. And that includes setting church policy. I mean, we just revised our bylaws. And there were some points in there where just in how we approach membership and things like that had their roots in some Greek. I mean, it's amazing how it works out.
You've been with me for about 18 months. How much progress have you made? Just in terms of encouraging other people, because some people think, well, it's going to take me forever. Just tell us where you're at in the roughly 18 months or so that you've been working on this, getting these extra hours to get you from 250 to 300 points in the season.
I would venture to say it's actually night and day. So I mentioned earlier that 2 Corinthians is where I just got hung up. I couldn't get past everything that's going on there. It's not just the vocabulary there, but it's also some technical syntax and things like that. I'd say it's night and day because of where I've come from 18 months ago, because I was able to just a couple of weeks ago kind of run through the first 7 chapters of 2 Corinthians to kind of work on this high level, what's Paul's argument here, the first 7, 8, or 9 chapters. And I didn't know all the vocab, but I could guess. And it was about on, and obviously that has something to do with knowing the English that's there too. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that 18 months ago. Yeah. And now, because I have, I'm up to 3,000 words in my vocab list over that time, since I guess it was July or August of last year, 2019. I would still be struggling through understanding the text through a block diagram rather than as it's written. Block diagrams are great. I still use them, still utilize them, but I don't rely on them. I do most of my study just by reading with a pencil and marking in my actual. I don't know how else to say it, but it's night and day. It's just there's a comfort level to it and an enjoyment, and hopefully there's a clarity. Hopefully people are noticing a clarity too.
Were you on the was this something you were hesitating about doing, that extra investment at the beginning, or were you just like, no, I just got to do this?
I was hesitant. So the first time I ran across Master New Testament Greek through I think the website has a Greek and Hebrew Bible. And so I was looking into doing that because I thought, okay, if I get my own Bible, then I'm really invested here. And that didn't work because I didn't have the foundation. But I remembered the site, and I think I ran across maybe a YouTube video or something like that. And then I found it interesting, but I'm a pastor after all. I don't have the time that it takes to put in, to relearn what I lost. I don't have that time. And then, but there was this, there was the student edition. Well, okay, I'll give it a shot. The student edition, it's inexpensive, but it's got all the vocab, and I know that that's where I'm suffering right now. And so got into that, and that was really the hook. I'm sure that's not necessarily how you intend it, but that for me, that was the hook, because it was like, it reminded me of what I was missing, what I felt like I had in seminary, or what I was on the verge of having in seminary, and getting back into that, and reading First John in Greek, and actually understanding again what it was saying without having to go look up all these words. And then the intermediate course was coming out, and got an email about that, and that was it. I knew that the one step that I was missing at that point was the encouragement and the accountability that came with the community. And once I got in on the intermediate course, along with the community and the membership, it was everything I was looking for, without knowing that that's what I was looking for. I needed the structure, and I needed the encouragement and the accountability. So within 2 months, everything was changed.
What would you say to somebody who's kind of, maybe in the position you were in back in the day, they're sort of thinking, I don't know if it's worth it. How would you address that hesitancy with somebody who thinks, there's probably value there, maybe I can do it on my own? What would you say?
I would say, yeah, maybe you can do it on your own. That's not impossible.
Yeah.
But this is totally worth it. It is worth the investment. It's worth the time. Don't overestimate what you can do on your own. And then also think about, especially as a pastor, what you might bring to the table in a community that nobody else really can. Whether the experience, the experience that you're bringing to the table with ministry, and dealing with with real people and everything, and also the encouragement that you can bring to others, that there are pastors out there who want to learn the language just like me, so I would say it's worth it. Don't overestimate yourself, and think of the encouragement you can be.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Noah. I really enjoy having Noah in the membership. I really enjoy any time I get with him, and he's actually involved now quite a bit in actually helping members through the beginning Greek phase of New Testament Greek as well. So he's a real blessing to me, and I'm sure he's a blessing to many members inside Master New Testament Greek as well. Don't forget, if you are in pastoral ministry, I want to know below in the comment section how you interact with the language, the original languages of the New Testament and the Old Testament perhaps as well. Let us know what tools you use, how you interact with it, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing from your comments and your views down there as well. Don't forget, if you are interested in taking your Greek to the next level, download my roadmap to mastery at masterntgreek.com/roadmap, and that way you can sort of get an idea of what's involved from going from wherever you are all the way to full fluency of the Greek New Testament. So with that, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to serving you in the next video, and until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. And you too can become a 300 hitter. We'll see you then.